And by that, we take us to our next speaker and the next topic for today. And we have then hopefully online with us here, Stoyan Terziev from BI. Let's see if he can join in. Oh, it looks good there. Hi, Stoyan.
Hi, Wolf. Thanks for having me here.
Good to have you here. I can hear you well.
Okay,
excellent. So, Stoyan, you're going to talk about empowering new product launches with data acquisition and data science. That's a pretty long title for a presentation, I must say.
Yeah, a long presentation as well, 20 slides. I hope I'll manage to squeeze them in approximately 20 minutes.
Okay, I'll give you time then. To give you plenty of time, but be sure to click fast. You should be aware that there is a slight delay from you click until the slide changes, so don't click too fast. So
right, okay, noted.
Okay. Good. First of all, Stoyan, I'd just like to introduce you. Stoyan here, he is a very experienced Click consultant with more than 5 years in designing and developing analytic solutions for the life science industry. He comes from a mathematical background with a strong incline towards financial sciences. So this is a kind of interesting mix you have here between the medtech and the financial. So I'm really looking forward to seeing your presentation here, Stoyan. So.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope you like it.
Yeah, I'm quite certain I will. So, and here you will have the ability to send in questions, and afterwards we will have a Q&A with Stoyan here live. So please, Stoyan, the stage is yours. So.
Thank you, Ulf. First, I want to start by thanking the team that organizes this event, and for the prestigious position of putting me right between Magnus Claren, who's the Dean of School of Information Technology in Halmstad University, and Magnus Bjørsne, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is the CEO of AstraZeneca BioVenture Hub. Well, I don't have the credentials of either of those guys, so I think we maybe hear a little bit of a coffee break. Just kidding. We're going to make it work. I have a lot to say in a little time, so let's dive in. Okay, let's see if you can. Right, one slide back. So here, I'm Stoyan Terziev. Thanks for introduction. You already mentioned a couple of things about me. So I'm a BI solution manager. I have been developing Click analytics solutions and consulting clients how to succeed with data. I'm here today thanks to BI. BI as a company is focused on democratizing data analytics solutions for life sciences and healthcare enterprises around the globe. It has built high expertise with data analytics solutions, primarily with Click, consultant planning with Anaplan, and process automation with UiPath. Oops, did I click too fast? I did. Okay, so let me walk you through the agenda real quick. So we'll talk about the axioms of data processing, the industry specifics. We are going to walk through the advanced analytics empowered product launches, or how did we solve this problem. We're going to give you some solution and heuristics on the topic. And at the end of it, I hope that we'll have the time for me to give you something to take away at the end of the presentation, a little bit of a, if we like to call it, the brainstorming, or how to find new creative ways to use your data, or to use data in general. So here are the axioms I would like to start off with. We're not gonna spend too much on them. We kind of take them for granted. So data is generated at an exponential rate these days. It's true, like we live in unprecedented era where data is actually generated with a higher rate than we actually have the computational power to process it. Then we know that internal data is mostly structured. Well, that's right. Like we all use tables to store in our core systems, like ERP systems, CRM systems, manufacturing, logistics, etc. Then external data is, I've said that it's mostly unstructured. It actually falls into two categories. One category is where we have those APIs, or data that is already made available for public use, where it comes in a mostly, let's say, a combination of structured and unstructured form. So what we will usually have to do as data people, we kind of have to get our hands on the structured data or make some sense of the unstructured. Then another axiom is that most companies, as much as I don't want to, or at least I cannot give you any scientific proof that that's true, but most companies lean towards using internal data only, and this, or primarily. And this is a little bit of a issue that we would like to address. Then last but not least, the volume that data is generated today actually is so big that it's beyond any person or any team's capability to actually go through it and uncover what is relevant data or make some sense of it. So we kind of have to rely on automatic systems to make this true. And the last thing is that data is a utility. And what I mean here by data is a utility is that the business value attributed to data processing has become critical measure for a long-term success of a company. Or we can also say that it's if we do not do that properly and if we do not diligently process our data and rely on it, we actually fall in another category. We could be endangering our future and our future successes. Another axiom that I would like to share with you is the traditional data flow that we're kind of all used to. I believe that there are a lot of data guys here on this presentation, so they're all familiar with this concept. Like we first collect our data, whatever is in our JD ERP system or CRM system, or if we have all sorts of systems, usually that's structured tabular data that we kind of have to extract, put it somewhere. Then we kind of have to transform it, massage the data so that we can make all the insights from different systems compatible. We then visualize it, and at the end of it, of course, we have the decision-making process. And that's a recipe that practically any conventional BI tool can cook. And this is kind of a known one. But here, let me introduce you to the concept of advanced analytics data flow. Or this is how companies that have maturely adopted the advanced analytics approach would usually handle it. And here I have said this one thing about the secret ingredient, and I have put this robot icon. I want to mislead you at first, and I hope that I'll clarify at the end. So how does this process start? It starts usually with collecting available data. So we no longer rely only on whatever our internal systems have to offer, but now we also get information from the World Wide Web, or we actually get and scrape some posts and comments, or we get some articles in the web. Like that's a lot of data. It's unstructured mostly. Of course, we kind of have to combine it with our internal data so that we can kind of maximize the effect of our analytics. But this is something that, conventional BI tools are pretty good at collecting internal and tabular data. But whenever we're talking about unstructured pieces, that's when they usually fail. Then we push this to data mining algorithms. We kind of have to process this data. We kind of have to make some sense. And that's where almost impossible, it's not possible for a person to spend the amount of time to read through thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of articles and posts and something to actually get some insights from it. Then we have this arrow pointing to the data discovery. And this is where people kind of have to look at the results and decide if this is something that's worth, here we're building hypotheses. So we want to explore if certain assumption that we have is true. Should we go back and revisit our data mining algorithms? Should we enhance them so that we get additional insight? Then we move forward to the ETL and visualize. And here is where traditional BI tools usually shine. They're all made to extract, transform, visualize, load your data, build those data models, have neat charts. And then we kind of go to this prediction algorithm. And now that we have all the data, the fact data, we kind of have to see into the future. And that's another one. Unfortunately, we will not be covering as much as I would like from this part in the presentation, but hang on with me. I think we're gonna make something work out of it as well. And then at the end of it, we have the decision-making process, where some of the companies, here I have put the icon of the robot again, because some of the digital companies nowadays rely on automated decision-making process. And that's a known fact. We have a lot of examples on the market, like Facebook and Google are probably the leaders. So the secret ingredient here, it looks like it's some sort of complex algorithms. Like if we're extracting data, it looks like we should be using some neat Python library and write a bunch of code, and it's going to be super complicated. But that's totally not what I think on this topic. Of course, we need the algorithms, but the key ingredient here is knowledge of what is possible, and the notion that we need to focus more of our energy to ask more convoluted questions, such as how is my company standing on the market? like this sounds like a generic question, and it is. So can we answer it with data? Okay, let's take a look further. First, let's see how the life sciences industry is different. Of course, all the industries have a lot in common. They all need to make profit to survive, and like it doesn't start there, it doesn't end there. There are a lot of similarities. But here are a couple of things that I, in my experience, have meant to be critical differentiation between the life sciences and other industries. So the first one is time. What that means is that usually the life sciences industry needs a lot of time in research to actually develop a product or practice that is gonna hit the market. And this is, we all know, like we could be talking about 5 years, 10 years, tens of years of research. And then we have a lot of resources. So we cannot start the project with just a little bit of cash. Like we need tons of resources at the very start of the project. And that puts us to our next one. It's a huge risk. We could have been spending so much energy on something that at the end of it, we can scientifically prove that has not been possible. Like we could have misled ourselves in thinking that we're researching a viable item, so the risk is high. We could be losing the entirety of our investment. And this is another very significant one. Then we have the factor that the segment is network sensitive. What I mean here is that you could have the best product out there on the market, and that's just not enough for you to succeed. You need to have opinionated people behind you. You need to have the names of famous doctors who are going to support your practice. Look at your product, participate in your clinical trial, and at the end of it, they are going to say, all right, this one is worth it. And the public is just going to listen to them. And that's how the industry works. And then you also have this resourceful competition. And there are a lot of big companies which are scanning the market, looking for new great things. And the moment that a nice or niche product somehow appears and starts gaining speed on the market, the resourceful competition will usually go ahead and provide another solution to this problem. So you kind of have to always be on top of the curve. And those are all somehow threats. But there is one benefit to all of it, and that's the volume of open data has increased. And now all the healthcare and life sciences companies are recognizing that the aim for saving human life is no longer a company objective. It's now like a goal for humanity. So there are more and more companies opening their data, exposing it for everyone to use. And now we're looking towards an era where we expect that new breakthroughs are going to take place any moment. Like that's at least how I feel. So how do we empower product launches? So if I go to a marketing person and I ask them, okay, how to empower my product? He's probably gonna say, and this is something I have quoted in my slide, he's gonna say, get them talking, make it personal, reach further, and keep the hype. So what it means here, now I'm a data guy. I'm usually going to say, okay, how do I do that when I have limited resources? And exactly my limited resources and the need to hit an objective, which is so much greater than what my resources kind of can fulfill, forces me in a position where I kind of have to optimize the effect of what I have. And this now becomes a data problem. And for us to look at it as a data problem, we kind of have to translate those requirements in, let's say, data language, SQL if you like. So get them talking would transfer into identify the most vocal entities on the market. So if I have a limited budget for marketing and I want to reach out to medias, I want to know who are the ones or which medias should I actually reach out to maximize my effect. Then making it personal. What does it mean? Is actually fortify the background knowledge of my salespeople. So whenever they go ahead and pitch our new great product to doctors, they have a lot of background knowledge on who those people are. Why do they have to go and pitch them? And salespeople kind of have this trend of changing workplaces rather often. That's at least what my experience has shown. So we sometimes also need to onboard them with our, let's say, specific knowledge as quickly as possible. And how do we do that? We cannot ask them to read thousands of articles for our clients just like this. So we kind of have to have a summary of all the information, have it available for them in a dashboard if you'd like. Then reach further. What it means is that we may not always be available or capable to serve our market with the product that we have just kicked in. And that's normal. We sometimes need to seek partnership with other organizations. So how do I know which one is the best one that I should go to? Well, there is an answer to this. It's a data answer. So we're going to look at it in a minute. And the keep the hype would usually mean that you would like to inspire the industry preachers. Like those would be the doctors or medical people who have a lot of influence on the market. And they kind of, whenever they say something, a lot of people hear it. And you want to know if those people are saying something about your product, how much of an audience does it reach? And does it have a positive or negative narrative? So we're going to get to that as well. So is it a solution or heuristics? And it's kind of a little bit of a both. How do we start? And now we're going to get into the solution itself, or at least a piece of it. Like it's too big of a thing to be displayed in 20 minutes, but if I can give you the heuristics here, I think that's enough. So we start off by getting our hands on whatever data we can. Like, that's how we start. And we actually did this using Click alone for some of our projects. What we did is there is a very nice library called Beautiful Soup in Python. For the data guys here, I think that rings a bell. So we kind of had to redo it, use some semantic analysis in Click, and let that term not scare you. It's not that difficult. Like we just analyze the text, we bring in the data, regardless if it was an API that's somehow publicly available, or if it's a network that we can get the data from, or if it's a web source, which allows you to actually get the data, because there is a little bit of a legal and ethical issue that we all need to be aware of. And then now we have the data. We had done this with Click, and we plug in the NLP, or natural language processing part. And here to the right, you can see a bunch of algorithms we actually used during this process. And interestingly enough, I researched this one, so I can tell you that none of those algorithms were before ever made in Click. And I don't want to say too much of a word here, but a lot of them hadn't been made in other conventional BI platforms as well. So I don't have this fact check to the point. So I have just experienced it. I have had the cases where I needed to use those algorithms, and I only noticed that some of them are done in Python, not really transparent though, so you kind of have to use them as a service, and you don't recognize what's behind them. And that's one of the issues that I recognized during recreation of those algorithms. It's that they have so many pieces you can tweak to increase or maximize the results of what you're doing, that if you use the library, it's often insignificant. Like you're often missing the opportunity to optimize it to the point where you're gonna get maximum value from your unstructured data. So going quickly through some of them. Named entity recognition. What it means is that it kind of looks through any text you plug in, and it says, okay, that's a name. That's the name of something. Is it a person? Is it an organization? Is it a hospital, university? And then it stores and it says, okay, I found this name here. And then it does this for all of our data. The idea behind machine learning is that it would usually start to behave better, start to better recognize entities. But even if we started off, let's say, blankly, we're still going to get some useful results. Then latent Dirichlet allocation, we use this algorithm to identify what sorts of topics are recurring in the unstructured data that we have. So I have a paragraph here that's focused on ophthalmology or something else, and I want to know that, I want to have that labeled. And the labeling part comes from this. Then the longest common subsequence. Now I have a couple of names that really look similar, but a computer cannot really know if two similar names are the same person. So it kind of needs this amplifier of its ability to identify similarities. And that's the longest common subsequence algorithm that we also recreated in Click. And then association rule mining. This is how we compare. We know that this thing is grouped often with the other one. And at the end of it, we closed it with k-means clustering. And since the k-means clustering is one of those algorithms which has super neat visual display, we also decided to write an article about it. So you can check the article and get the full code. If any of you guys have a Click environment, you can get some use out of it. So you can check our website, and there is a link and explanation how the algorithm works. So here are some interesting facts that we kind of stumbled upon when we were doing all of those exercises. So in the green KPIs, you can see how much lines of code that did the algorithm take, and the yellow part is what is the runtime. And actually here, the funniest part is that one of the shortest, the longest common subsequence, has one of the longest runtimes. And when I say runtime, I mean like on a comparable volume of data. So it's super, super slow, and it's quite optimized. And the more you optimize it, like the worse the results. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. You kind of have to already possess strong computational machines for that. It was an interesting fact that I decided to share. So how those algorithms actually correlate to the questions that we had previously asked. So for example, the named entity recognition easily allows us to identify the vocal entities, or we at least know who or what are the entities in all our unstructured data. It's like the main pillar behind all of the others. Like this is where we start working with some sort of a structured data, a piece we can start off all our other algorithms from. Then the latent Dirichlet allocation, this helps us like mix together a key person or a key organization with its most recurring scientific topics. So we know what's relevant for our market or not. So most of the, let's say, medical companies that have been on the market for a lot of time, they already have a huge network, but they still lack, like it's practically impossible to have this great insight on the market unless you're using any sort of such technology. So even regardless how many years of exposure you have had to the market, this sort of thing is applicable. Then we go to the longest common subsequence. I already explained this one, the association rule mining. And now that we have plugged all those algorithms together, those questions become like select star from this table where you have ranked this. Like it becomes a data problem, which you can kind of query. And it's something that you can use in a dashboard, for example. And let me show you how this would look like from a data standpoint. And now this, what I'm showing here is super simplified, but all those data guys, I believe that they're already doing this data model in their head. They're mixing together saying, okay, we need the ID here in this table, mix it together with the other one, get this valuable insight from it. But the bottom line is that this is how you kind of look at the data once you have structured it. You know who the entities are. They're not necessarily people, not necessarily organizations. They could be all sorts of things. And you want to assess which ones of them are the ones that are worth your energy and resources so that you can maximize the effect of your product on the market. So let's take Dr. Brown, for example. And now we know that he has appeared on 847 places, let's call it places, in any of our unstructured data. And we know that they have a public exposure of 12,000 people. So whenever Dr. Brown, and here any link to actual people is accidental, just so you know, whenever Dr. Brown has something to say, he will say it indirectly to 12,000 people or 12,000 instances. And that is, like, at least we can identify that that's the better approach than going to Dr. Smith, for example. And going forward, if we would like to know, for example, the relationship between two of our entities, and we want to know which network we should explore and which are the companies that are our best pick for partnership, well, this is another tool you can go to. Then at the end of the solution, doing all the data, we kind of can wrap it up in optimized marketing budget, higher PR effectiveness. And one thing I didn't talk about, and I left this slide specifically for it, it's the quality. And why do I mention this? Usually the quality is something you would like to focus on during your product development activities and not at the end when you're marketing it. So let me leave that for the end. The last thing is the increased market change reaction time. Of course, we already said time is vital. So no comments on those guys. The one with the quality is an interesting aspect. And I plugged it in here because it's outstanding. Like it's an outlier. And here is a fun story. A colleague of mine who had worked on similar solution like this one, they actually found out that once they have scraped a lot of public information, they were able to identify that they now have all the information for their flaws, because they can see people commenting negative things about their product. And despite the low number of negative comments, like, this is how they ended up with. I see that I'm running a little out of time. Am I?
Just a little bit, but keep going for a few more seconds, Stoyan.
All right. A few more seconds is going to be enough. A couple of quotes. I have this at the end. So one is, applying advanced analytics lifts the spirit, but struggling to understand the math builds the character. That's going on my Facebook. But now, the one that I actually wanted to leave you off with is, the complex and subtle problems we face today require complex and subtle solutions. And we need complex and subtle thoughts to bring those solutions to life. So I would like to encourage people, especially people from the business, to submit more difficult requirements from the data people, like more generic ones, so that we can force this process going forward and at least give data scientists a run for their money, as I would say it. Okay, last one, I promise. Reverse the paradigm. So we're all, yeah, kind of rushing it through here. I promise this is the last slide. So we're all used to this traditional find the problem, then think of a solution, and then get a solution approach. And now this new volume of data, this new, I would say, endless sea of data that is only limited by our computational ability, gives us the opportunity to reverse the paradigm and look at it from another angle. And that angle here is, why not we just get the data, run the analytics, and see what problems we already solved with the data that we have? Well, I guess that's the question that I would like to leave everyone with, and see if you guys can make any new creative use of your data using this approach. Well, Ulf, thank you very much for keeping me running for a couple of minutes more.
Thank you, Stoyan. It was so interesting, so I had to give you a few more minutes. Unfortunately, there will be no time really for the questions. I do have one. It's more from me then. But I mean, you talk a lot about the ability to data. You say it's more for the humanity. It's on. But as data become more and more valuable over time, do you foresee that there will be any problems with actually acquiring the data or getting the data? Because I mean, you said here, get the data and then find the problem, but will it be
that's
available,
an interesting question.
or will it be sold? So.
Yeah, one of the interesting, in my experience, I have met this one. If you start running hypotheses and see if one thing or the other is true, eventually you end up in a situation where magically you run out of data. Like, despite that we have so much data available, and of course we have a lot of technical problems acquiring that data, of course, but you end up at a point where there is no data to support any more decisions. And that's also a vital information, like not knowing what hasn't been explored is an opportunity, I would say, in a sort. And of course, the technical question for how do we store this enormous data? Is it truly like worth it to keep the storage? Like, those are open questions, which I believe bigger minds than mine are debating on.
Yeah. Good answer there. Thank you very much, Stoyan. It's been extremely interesting. But then we have to round you off, and we have to go on in the schedule to the next one. But thank you very much, Stoyan. Extremely interesting.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Which brings us to our